What's up, everybody? Andrew from the F1 Podcast here, bringing you season 6, episode 10 on this beautiful Tuesday, May 12th. I'm here with John Ricci. John, how are you doing today?
Hey Andrew, it's good to be back. I've been away for a couple of episodes. I've been kind of behind the scenes trying to do a little bit of stuff, and I think we got some stuff working over the summer.
Ooh, I like to hear that. And today, John, we are joined with a special guest. Some people might know him as F1 Guy Dan on Twitter, X now, but he is our local dietitian. We have a award named after him. It's Dan Valente. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing good. Always a good time when I'm on this. And, I just love doing episodes with you guys, and this should be a lot of fun.
Awesome. We love having you on. And today we're going to talk a little bit about Miami that we had a couple weekends ago, but also we're going to talk a little bit of the news that we learned this week. Gucci getting involved in the sport, who knows? But Miami, we were back after a 5-week hiatus. Everybody bought performance upgrades except Aston Martin because they couldn't figure out what the hell they were going to do with their engine. But it was almost a performance upgrade in itself when they finished the race, two of them together, which was great. But Dan, we had Kimi Antonelli winning, making his third consecutive race victory from pole position. Something that Charles Leclerc doesn't know what that is. No offense. But what were your thoughts on the Miami Grand Prix?
It's almost hard to recall Miami. It feels like that one was now 5 weeks ago as well in this weird season we're having in this calendar. But that was probably maybe peak Kimi Antonelli, where, aside from lap one, which we've all come to know now that, he's just a surefire bet to lose positions on lap one. But other than that, he pretty much had maybe the strongest weekend of the season, where his pace, we haven't seen that much of a pace discrepancy between him and George as much as we saw in Miami, where he really made his stand. And it kind of feels like we've slow walked to this position now where, Kimi won in China and we were like, oh, this is like a fun story. Then he won in Japan and took the lead of the championship. And we're like, okay, but George will come around eventually. We're all kind of just expecting it. And then he has a performance like he did in Miami. And now he's up by 20 points in the championship. And it's like, oh, maybe we should start taking this a little bit seriously. This isn't just like a feel-good moment or a feel-good story for the 19-year-old Italian kid who came up through the Mercedes system. We head to Canada now. And I think if he dominates George like we saw in Miami and he does that in Montreal, I think that's going to put George's head on a swivel, and he's going to have to really come to terms with he wasn't just going to cakewalk his way to this driver's title.
And if I could just build on some of the comments that Daniel was saying, is the amount of, I don't want to say support, but the confidence that Toto Wolff has in Kimi Antonelli, because I think that was one of the questions was, how is, at the time, an 18-year-old stepping into a seat after Sir Lewis Hamilton has been there, 7-time world champion? It's is he going to have to learn? But I mean, even think about it. You did talk about the struggles in the start of races. Is so far this season, Mercedes has lost 24 team positions on lap one, but they're still able to come back and win it. And I mean, I wonder if all the rosary or the niceness of Mercedes, could there be a situation that both McLaren drivers happened in Canada next week? I'm wondering if there's got to be a moment where George is like, you know what, I've been here longer. I'm gonna maybe fight a little bit more, but it's so
I
cool
think
still. Regardless, it's still so cool to see Kimmy just absolutely the start he's having this season has been pretty important to see.
I think that's a good point you make too, and I think going back to what I said too, it almost feels like Kimmy's just playing with house money, because no one expected him to really. People expected him to progress and be better this year than he was last, but I don't think anyone expected him to be 20 points up in the championship after 4 Grand Prix. So it's kind of almost where he can have these terrible starts, but he doesn't get frustrated or overdrive where you see other drivers, guys who expect to be fighting for the championship. Sometimes we see it with Max where he has a mistake on lap one and then he gets ultra aggressive, and sometimes that leads to his own undoing. But Kimi, he kind of just like keeps it cool because he's a 19-year-old kid, and nothing is that serious to him, and he's able to bounce back and not let these moments like undo him. And I think what you're saying too about George, where I think we are going to reach a boiling point eventually if things do stay like this, where George is going to kind of have to have like a Hail Mary moment. And I mean, we've seen it in the past where like there's so many races that you can recall, like even Spa, where he got disqualified a few years ago, where he's not in a good position and he just says like, screw it, let's do this Hail Mary strategy, or he throws caution to the wind and goes for it. And is there a moment where we might see that happen in the next couple of races where whether it's him going wheel to wheel with Kimi or it's just a bold strategy call, that the two could come to blows eventually here.
Do you think though? So I think if Kimmy were to beat George in Canada, personally, that would be to me a pivotal moment in the championship because George has performed so well in Canada previously. He won he won the race last year in Canada. He's hit two podiums in the last 3 years in Montreal. So like this is a track that George loves, and if Kimmy can beat George on like in a Mercedes, I really do think that at that point, Kimi becomes a favorite for the championship. I know he's won 3 in a row and everyone can kind of have streaks, but I do think that if he can beat George on a track that he performs very well at, it's just going to give him that extra more confidence. And it might screw up with George's little psyche a little bit here with regards to him trying to beat his own teammate now.
You see, I think it could too, if Kimi takes it to George in Canada and wins in Canada. But then I can also see a scenario where we come back to the European stretch of the calendar, and then we're saying, okay, if Kimi is better than George here, then it's for real. Because we remember last year, like Kimi had his terrible stretch over the European circuit, and then it was all on the non-European tracks where he was excelling. But I think if Kimi takes it to George in the sense of what you're saying, like we know this is a George Russell track. He goes well here. The Mercedes typically goes well here. And if Kimi can elevate himself to beat the best version of George, which is what we should expect at Montreal, then I do think it's time to, there's no more like, oh, this is just like a great story of a 19-year-old, a teenager leading the championship for the first time. It's like, no, this teenager might win this title.
And I think the wild card going into Canada is for those that have not been, or like Daniel, you and I have been to the track last year. Our team has been there for the last 4 years. The race has always been in June. So having this Grand Prix literally next week as we're recording this on May 12th, the weather is it could be as hot. It could be it's Montreal's always unpredictable, but like I'm packing my Blundstones just to prepare for whatever gets thrown at Circuit de Villeneuve. Because like we know that a driver like George Russell, if the weather is not completely hot or he prefers to race in colder temperatures, and he's proved that in some tracks in Europe.
Kind of the battle for Mercedes though, but we're going to move on. There was a couple of characters that had a couple spins this past weekend. Max at the start, Charles at the end. Yeah, Dan, you made a good point earlier, right? Where Max just did a little too much on lap one to try and gain that lead, caught the curb and did the spin. Good for him to like keep it on track and not collide with anybody else. But he kind of had to go then for a Hail Mary stop at that point because he just kind of got caught out with this strategy. But John, what the hell happened with Charles at the end there? And the guy just didn't care about track limits whatsoever.
No, we usually joke about track limits, like, is it Austria is the famous track or is it Belgium where everybody just continues to keep going off the track? But yeah, it's he ended up, I think he ended up third, but because of the amount of times that he went off the track, he was given, I believe it was a 20-second
time penalty. They dropped into P8.
Yeah, he came eighth.
And while some teams were celebrating in, I guess, the Golden State, I think a couple of teams wanted to get out of Florida as soon as possible. And I think Ferrari, they said, we probably need to get to Canada or back to Maranello ASAP.
If you look at the onboards, it's funny. It looks like, when I'm playing F1 25 and you're just cutting corners and whatever. But it is poor result for Charles. I mean, the guy was hanging on all weekend. He was probably putting that car in places it should have been, like we've seen time and time again, hanging with the McLaren, the newly transformed McLaren, like we've seen in 2024 in Miami, and it looks like they've done it again in Miami, and with the Mercedes up front, and then it just got to the end, and eventually it was a straw that broke the camel's back there, and he couldn't hang on any longer.
Dan, in your opinion, now that McLaren has kind of boosted up that car, right? And they provide, as you mentioned, they provided performance upgrades in Miami again. Do you think Lando has a chance to really defend his title now against the likes of Kimi and George?
It seems like a long shot, but it's also too early to really rule out anybody. And last year he overcame 34 points or whatever it was after the Dutch Grand Prix, and you're looking now and you have what is it, 18 more races to go, potentially more if they add Bahrain or Jeddah back on the calendar. And I think we've just seen how fast these tides can turn and how fast momentum can change in F1, where, after the first two races, like a good example, the first two races of the season, it looked like George was going to like cruise to a championship, and now all of a sudden it's Kimi's turn. And there's just so many twists, and especially when you have new cars and the development war is just going to be crazy this year. Like there's no telling where we can be in a month from now and 2 months from now. Like it's certainly possible that McLaren can catch and overtake Mercedes, just because they're a customer team, that hasn't stopped them in the past. And just the trajectory that they're on that we've seen from Australia, they're getting better with every race. So
And I think this is the first time too is that Canada is going to be a sprint race. So that also plays in a lot of team strategies. And I think a car like McLaren, if they have the upgrades that they've proven to have they brought into Miami, I think it's very possible that they can play a little bit of spoiler, but maybe sneak in if both George and Kimi are fighting between one and two in a scenario at Circuit du Genève.
and every time we've had a sprint race this season, it's ever kind of been a straightforward weekend where, in China, like George won the sprint and then Kimi won the race. And then in Miami, Lando won the sprint and then Kimi won the race. So, there's more volatility and more opportunity for teams to either dial in their setups very efficiently or to get it wrong and need the sprint to kind of work through their issues. But that's also valuable points lost. So I think, this will be another fun weekend and another weekend where anything can happen.
I predict another disaster class from Aston Martin, just because they needed the sprint to really hone in on the car, and by hone in I mean finish the damn race. It is so bad. And then I heard reports that Adrian Newey was hospitalized this past week because of an illness. It's just, if anything, it just went from like bad to worse, all things considered. And they're so far behind the development game that, I mean, is there like really any hope for this team this year? I don't think there is, but that's me being biased.
It's a shame too because Alonso has always typically gone well in Montreal, and just knowing that this year will probably be a write-off, like there's no chance. Like if he makes it out of Q1, it's like you should pop the champagne and celebrate.
Oh,
Uh, but I do think 2026 is probably just going to be a very tough learning experience for the team, and then hopefully by the time we get to the end of the calendar and we're in like Brazil or something, and he's popping that car and Q2, we're like, wow, this team has come a long way, and who knows what could happen in 2027. And then they'll debut the 2027 car, and we'll all get hyped up about it again. And hopefully this time it actually leads with something positive.
Another promising team that had a good weekend, maybe not so much Pierre Gasly, but Alpine getting points again. And Daniel, I guess like there's been some rumors about a new sponsor coming into Alpine. I don't know if you saw Gucci's coming in, so might be coming in to be their main sponsor for Alpine. But like having other than the situation that had Beer Cassie, the Halo played a significant part in the collision, him flipping. But like, do we see as a team, they've the start of the season and what they've been able to do has been quite promising, while some of the other teams in maybe the bottom of the grid haven't been.
I think what's been promising about Alpine is that, not only do they have a Mercedes engine and that's led to better performance, but they're getting production from both drivers finally. And we've seen Franco Colapinto kind of maybe turn a corner in Miami. It's probably his best F1 weekend as a driver. And, was coming off his big road show in Argentina. So who knows? Maybe he's feeling this load of confidence now, and there's a lot of weight lifted off his shoulder, and he can finally start delivering more of these drives that I think we were all excited to see when he left Williams for Alpine, and then didn't really, contribute much last year. But it seems like he's in a much better place, and he's actually challenging Gasly. And Gasly, I mean, there's not enough good words I could say about him. He's been up until that crash in Miami, he's one of the most underrated, if not one of the top performing drivers of this season so far.
It was a bit of a freak accident too. It just kind of clipped the wheel at an
Yeah,
unfortunate pace, and just the way that the car moved is, thank again, as you mentioned, JR, like thank God for the halo, right? Like where would we be without it, sort of idea, right? Because it was just it was a small freak accident that turned into like a major flip.
yeah, I think it was the roll hoop or whatever it was too that like saved him. But yeah, not often you see a car flip over, but it's crazy how like that. Even when that happens, that you just like kind of assume that the guy will just walk out and will be fine, and that just speaks to the safety enhances that Formula One has come. It's been come a long way.
I guess I'll add. Oh, go ahead, Andrew. Sorry.
Unfortunately, like Audi and Haas, they had like just another disaster weekend, unfortunately for them. The soft to hard gamble did not work for Hulkenberg whatsoever. And they also had like mechanical reliability issues as well with regards to retirement. But what were your thoughts on the midfield teams overall, Dan, this weekend?
But I feel for Audi because it always feels like anytime I like end up taking a look at the timing sheets, and I'm like they're always right there or like they're close, but never they're just like not close enough. They're always 11th, 12th. Like Hulkenberg's qualified like 11th, I don't know how many times. And the Bortoleto, even though he started in the pits or dead, I don't know if it was in the pits now. It's been so long, but he went from like 21st to 12th. And again, it's just like he's knocking on the door, but they just can't break through. I do think Audi will be another one of those teams that maybe catches fire as the year progresses. And Haas, I think they were saying in Miami that like they didn't bring any upgrades to Miami, and they're gonna bring more Montreal and like slow play it. So I think Haas has a chance to kind of punch back against Alpine here, and the midfield's actually been like quite exciting too. Just like Alpine leading the way, but Ollie Behrman's been getting mixed up in there, and Audi, when they put it all together and have like a smooth weekend, they've also been kind of fighting for those last points positions there.
And just to build on Daniel's point about Audi, especially them coming into this season, Hulkenberg got interviewed after Miami. He said it was a proper character building weekend. We had some promising signs, and the paces in the car is not bad, but obviously we need to be able to finish sessions and get the car out there. Yes, just a lot of headwind this weekend. Kind of needed to regroup, reset, and take it on the chin. So, I mean, we did talk about like, they've had some promise of, they're not there yet, but I mean, in a season of things, anything could happen.
Well, shout out to Williams for the double points finish.
Oh yeah,
The first one of the year. That was a good one.
Great topic. Yeah,
Great
Carlos
pit
Sainz,
strategy.
yeah.
They left Alex out there, perfectly timed pit strategy. Was able to get double points, which is incredible to see. Um, but yeah, Dan, we've heard some rumors about some engine changes for 27 already. Everybody's comments that, we hate the regulations have been heard, not on deaf ears, thankfully. So here we're going back to more of the 60-40 split as opposed to the 50-50 in terms of ICE and MJU. So what are your hopes for 27 in terms of these quote unquote new engine regulations?
um, just to feel a bit more normal, and I think that's all anyone wants is just like a sense of normalcy again, and not this stuff where it feels like we're seeing one thing with our eyes, and then F1 is telling us something different is happening. Where it's like, we're like, what is going on? Why are the drivers losing all the speed on straights? And then F1 is just telling us like 100 overtakes. This is all you're allowed to talk about. Be happy. But I think it's a good decision. It's a step in the right direction. And, 2027 should be a little better, at least for the drivers in the cockpit. And those are the people that people dish out money to see at the end of the day. I'm not in the car, but even if the viewing experience isn't as great because there's not so many artificial overtakes happening, you still want the sport to keep that sense of like pureness and like that the drivers are making the difference. So I think in 2027 we'll see more of that, and it'll shift back in the right direction. And honestly, kudos to F1, the FIA, all the teams, and the engine manufacturers too for recognizing that this wasn't sustainable and it didn't work. They took a shot. They took a Hail Mary. This was a very uh, optimistic gamble to go 50-50. And they tried it. And, as much as they tried to push that it was a raving success, at least they recognize that, what, this isn't the way of the future. And I mean, people have given like Stefano Domenicali like flack for his comments. But if you read between the lines of what he's saying, like he did an interview with the race and he was basically, they were asking like, how come, even if you did believe that these regulations were bad, would you be critical of it? And he was like, well, what? There's no point. I don't believe in like arguing outside the house, like in public. So that just says to me that like, they've recognized behind the scenes that something is not right. But as for him, for example, as the commercial rights holder, his job is to maintain or increase the product's value. He's not going to come out and thrash it, but at least they all got together behind the scenes. It was like this isn't right. And I think too many times we've seen teams and manufacturers like try to hold on to advantages if it helps them. So, I think it's a good thing that everybody came together and did a sensible thing for the future.
I think I'll add is I think people just wanted to have the fun back. People wanted to see some like hardcore racing. Maybe don't want to see people having to save battery for a couple of laps leading up. Just like I know I saw even a reel the other day of their discussions about V8s coming back, and I was like, yeah, bring back the V8s, bring V10s. But I guess like time will tell and then I guess we'll see maybe firsthand in Canada. Just to actually see the 2026 cars in action in person and give like a real take. And honestly, ask some fans around in Canada what they think. Andrew, I guess anything from your perspective on these potential changes?
I just think I always had a fear that with the initial changes and kind of the way that F1 had been handling, criticism from the fans is that I was worried that they were thinking that we were too stupid in terms of F1 fans, right? That we just saw overtakes being like, oh my God, it's such a great sport. Look at all these overtakes. But at the end of the day, we know why the overtakes were happening. It wasn't because of, it was based on the battery, right? It wasn't because of pure race to wheel racing in that regards, right? So I'm happy that they finally acknowledged that and are doing something about it. So that's kind of like my thoughts on the regulations. And yeah, I'm hoping, and as a side note, I'm hoping in Canada we get, it would be fun if they did. I wish they had the behind the scenes conversation like they did a couple of years ago in
Oh
terms
yeah,
of
yeah.
changing the effing
Well,
car, right? Like that would have been unreal to see a car just survive.
well, not to put somebody on the spot, but a little birdie told me on X that someone has media accreditations this next week. Congratulations, Daniel.
Yes, I will be in the paddock again this year, and I'm very much looking forward
We
to
got our
it.
source, boys.
I got to get my own sources first. Last year was my first year, and it was like crazy just to figure out how the circus works. That is F1, but this year, I have the circus nailed down as much as I could, and I'm looking forward to getting you guys all the scoops you need.
Yeah, now that you've gone through it once, being part of the media, what are you looking forward to the most in terms of that you enjoyed last year? But what's one thing that you're going to be changing in terms of your approach?
So last year, like I was finding out all the media availabilities as like they were happening. And what I mean by that is you would just see like everybody in the media room get up and leave, and you're like, okay, something must be going on. Where is everyone going? And that's how I was able to find my way to either the team hospitalities when they were doing interviews and stuff like that. But now I know the right resources and I know where I need to be, and just even trying to set things up with certain teams and how far in advance you have to like book some of these things is crazy. Like I remember I was trying to go 2 years ago. I was trying to go and I was emailing like a month before. They're like, "Sorry, we're all booked up. Like you got to email us in January." And this is when the race was still in June.
Oh
It's
my
like
goodness.
January, damn. But it is crazy. I have to say how much access F1 gives once you're in. Like just the availability itself to the drivers, the team principals, press conferences, the TV pen. Like I have to say, even compared to like football and NFL, it's like crazy. It's so much better, and and there's I know it's because there's like 20 of them, and it's a smaller group, I guess, of media depending on what race, but it is definitely surreal.
I think I'll just add, like, I remember even when I covered IndyCar here in Toronto the last couple of years, and it was the same thing. I think last year is they gave us all kind of a schedule of possible, like, all the major news conferences, and so there'd be times I'd be in the media room editing a reel or something, and then like the whole room gets up, and I'm like, why is everyone getting up? And then I need to go running. I really wish I did. I tried to do a day in the life too, but I couldn't do it. And then are you going to go to any events at night, or do you have anywhere where people? I don't know if you're going to do a meetup, or you're probably going to be just stuck at the track all day.
I plan on being at the track most of the time, and then I got a couple interviews set up already, and just a couple pieces in my mind that I'm looking forward to putting together and hoping, fingers crossed, that they turn out as well as I imagine. And I can't wait to get that out there once the weekend's done.
What's
And we're
also
gonna
exciting too about Canada is that F2 will be racing there
Yeah,
as well. So that will be another, a whole new world in terms of access for F2 and the up and coming drivers.
maybe you'll get to see Colton Herta, maybe do an interview with him. Probably have asked better questions than I did. So
that would be exciting.
yeah. Well, and then we're gonna make sure we share your, I think the equivalent of a Patreon, because I saw you post that too, just to help cover some costs, because I know that weekend in Montreal is quite expensive, and especially if the Montreal Canadiens are will still be in the playoffs by then.
Well, Dan will be there, but also we have our own John Ricci on the floor there, on like in the paddock, technically, sort of. You'll try and get in there.
I'll sneak you
Um,
in. Don't worry.
Okay,
yeah.
let's.
Come in my bag.
Yeah, I told I told Daniel I would love to be his intern for the weekend. I have no problem being his executive assistant. I am pretty adaptable. Sounds like a job interview right now. But yeah, if any teams are looking for a fan perspective, not so much media perspective, I'm happy and available. Emails have been sent. I'm still waiting some responses. But we will do a fan meetup, I think, after FP1 or FP2 in the Lance Stroll section, like I do. I am going to an Audi event. I think it's on Friday. Um, and then I don't know if there's going to be a couple other meetups through the city. But I mean, Daniel's going to have some great access stuff. I'm going to have some real in the stands. If it's raining, I will be there. I got some great stuff ready. I mean, it will be interesting. May, weather. I got a lot of good content ready to go. And
Yeah,
we'll
if
start with
anyone's
that train
wondering,
ride if Daniel's on it with me.
yeah. I said, if
I think
anyone's
I'm
wondering too, Eric and I will be at the Garden Bar and Bodega as well for a race watch party. We hear there's some exciting promotions going on there for Canadian Grand Prix, so more of that to come in. But Daniel, any final thoughts going into Canada for Formula One?
I am very excited for this weekend, not just because it's my home race and I'm biased, but I am biased. But I just think there's so many good storylines, and especially when you miss something because you haven't had it in like 2 weeks now, it's like, I can't wait for this to be back. And I think just with George Russell, trying to get momentum back, trying to see if like, okay, was McLaren's magic just a Miami thing, or was that real? Like, have they jumped past Ferrari? Was Max Verstappen sticking at P2 in qualifying in Miami? Was that real, or was that just a mirage? Like, he went out last. Was that just track conditions? So I think there's going to be a lot of moving parts, and I'm very eager to try to put that puzzle together of which teams are trending in what direction.
The fans have just texted me. They said they want a photo of you and I at the track or
We got to
somewhere
do it
in Montreal. So we got to get it done. That's on the bucket list.
for
John,
sure.
anything you're looking forward to for Canada?
I would say the sprint race on the Saturday. We did talk about F2, F1 Academy is going to be there as well. I think overall, what is racing going to be like in May? I think I've been so used to it in June of all different types of weathers. What with it like a week early, a couple weeks early. I mean, is the Mercedes train going to keep on going? Is this a moment where George is going to overtake Kimi? Do the McLarens play a little spoiler because that is a track they can do well at on a street circuit? Um, can the Canadian Lance Stroll get into the points or have a good weekend? I
Oh,
know
we
the
know the answer
Lance.
to that. It's gonna be frickin' no, but we can try.
And this honestly, every year I just have, and Daniel, you probably have heard these stories, but just they're always just fun interactions. I run into Gordon Ramsay, or like who could be the next celebrity I run into? Maybe it is Daniel Valente. But like, yeah,
So
I'm ready for the weekend.
funny story. Last year, I was at the drivers parade. Like I was like standing on the grid, and I had no idea how I ended up there. I was just like tagging along with this other journalist from Montreal. He was like kind of showing me the ropes. He was like, do you want to go here?" And I was like, "Wait, we have access there?" And he's like, "Well, like yeah, but," and I was like, "Wait, don't you have work to do?" And then somehow, if you look on like the YouTube video, you can see me just like awkwardly standing there. But I will end with this too. The one thing about Montreal is it's always like kind of unpredictable in a way, or we kind of get some cool storyline. It seems like every year, like last year we got Kimi's maiden podium. The year before, like George and Max at the exact same qualifying time in Q3 for pole. The year before we had Hulkenberg qualified P2 before his grid penalty, and that would have been crazy. And then the year prior, Alonso put it on the front row in an Alpine. So, and that, if you go back to 2019, we have Sebastian Vettel's win, but not really a win because he lost it. But don't get me started on that.
Yeah, it's like, well, dub Monaco on Monaco without walls. It should be really exciting going around Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, especially end of May. What I always love about race week is that we could have 1,000 storylines going in, but it doesn't matter until the 5 red lights go out and the race finishes up itself. So, Dan, thank you so much for joining us this week on the F1 podcast. It's always a pleasure. And John, thanks again for coming. We will have Dan's Patreon in the comments or in the description of both YouTube as well as Spotify or any of the playlists or podcasts. I'm Andrew. Any final words, gentlemen?
Thanks for having me. I always love this podcast. It is very fun.
It's always a pleasure to have you on, Daniel. And starting next on Monday, right a day after my birthday, I can say it's race week in Canada.